genius. He had a unique way of seeing the world. He survived a tough childhood by reading everything he could get his hands on. He was always reading, always had a stack of books. We called him the absent minded professor, because he couldn't remember to do basic things, but he would read constantly.
And he knew everything that was important. I mean, at the time.
He was a great trivia partner. We always figured Mark was a good doctor because he worked so hard to get there and cared about people, and he was so smart. But it wasn't until he got sick that we came to realize he was a great doctor. I mean, his patients seemed to have really loved him and appreciated everything that he brought to his approach to medicine. When we learned how sick he was, and it was just in March, I kind of vowed that I would spend as much time as possible with the time he had left, and really was looking forward to having that time. And a big part of our grief is how fast this happened and how we didn't get that time that we thought we would. So we'll grieve for that time. We'll miss him forever. There's a saying, a great soul never dies. It brings us together again and again. And that was Mark.
I have no idea what I'm going to say. I thought I would write something down, and I didn't have a pen. And I didn't have a paper. Then I didn't have them at the same time. But Mark was my brother, and I'll never forget him. He'll always be a part of us, and I'm sorry. I knew I would be able to hold it together. When we were young, I think we all felt very protective of him. And as we grew up and we grew apart and we all went our separate ways, our mom left our dad when we were young, and she took us away from our home. And I think it kind of made it a little easier for us to all separate, unknown at that time, you know. But we all went our separate ways. We all had career paths. And then we would go months without reaching out to each other. But we never lost our love for him. And in the last several years, we started making a big attempt to come together. And we had reunions, and we were better on the phones. And a few years ago, I went through a pretty significant health thing, and he was the last person I wanted to call. I didn't want to bother him with it. Like if it had been my car and I broke down, I would have called my mechanic brother. But my body was breaking down, and I didn't want to bother him with it. But I had a lot of stupid doctors. And when I finally did reach out to him, and whenever from there far forward, he always had the best answers and the right answers. I would Google them later, and I'd be like, wow, he knew that on the fly. He's right. I was amazed. And I kind of got an inkling of how smart he was, and how educated he was, and how just good he was, and how kind he was. So, thank you, Mark, for that. Like Kathy, we thought we had more time. We all were like, Jesus, we've got a little bit of time here. Let's do something. Let's get back together. Let's bring ourselves together. Let's bring family in. And then he was gone. But a quick story. Last summer, him and I were yard selling. He loved a yard sale. He thought that was good. He loved a good bargain. Grocery Outlet was his best friend.
Only place in my mind.
Yeah!
He loved it. So we went yard selling, and we came upon this house, and there was a lady running the place, and we pulled up and we were in this Tesla, and the lady was she was young. She was like in her, I don't know, early 20s. And she said, oh my gosh, I love that car. I've always loved that car. I've always wanted to drive that car. And he never had seen this woman in his life. And I'm sitting there looking at things, and he's like, he folds out the keys, and he says, let's go. And she's like, you're kidding, right? And he said, no, come on, hop in, you can drive my car. It was a $130,000 car. And I'm like, and so off they go, and she is so excited. And she goes to get in the driver in the passenger seat, and he's like, no, you get to drive. And so he handed her the keys, and he was instructing her what to do and how to turn it on, and you know, and he's like, buckle up, put on your glasses, put your phone away, you know. And I could see her, and they were taking off, and I heard him say, no, faster. And she hit the pedal, and they took off like a bottle rocket down the street. I could hear them laughing. And they were gone like 15 minutes, and she had customers that came and went, and I'm like, and then finally they come back around the corner, and I think he made that young woman's life. She was lit up and so happy, and he was so excited to give that to her. And that was the
That's a
kind of
nice
guy he was.
story. Good story.
So I'm Jamie. I'm the baby of the family. I'm 12 years younger than Mark. And Mark, as you know, is a very gentle soul. So just to give you an idea of how gentle of a soul, I was his third wheel on every date in high school. That guaranteed that if the girl was going to get frisky, he didn't have to figure out how to say no, how to say yes, worry about being groped because there was a child in the car. So I went to a lot of dates during his high school years. And that moved on to college years. We grew up, anytime he came into town, we always went to the movies. I was the little sister to the entourage. Every single one of those boys helped raise me. I'm pretty sure some of them changed diapers at this point. And they also contributed to the issues of a minor. So we were out at our favorite snow spot, and we were standing around at the bonfire. And so that was the night. I'm pretty sure I was probably about 18, 19 years old. I had my first cigar, and I had my first champagne, because that's what we were passing around the bonfire, and he felt that I needed to be involved. So every time I smell a cigar, I think of him. And actually, I had a father-in-law who smoked the thinner cigars. I've never been a smoker in my life, but he would pull out his cigars, and I'd catch that whiff, and I'd immediately just hand it over. And I'd stand there and have a conversation with him and think of my brother. So that will be a smell that for the rest of my life, as I smell cigars, I will think of Mark. But he was a big part of my life in my formidable years. So I owe a lot of my medical knowledge to him. I'm nowhere near being in anything having to do with medicine, but I do have a lot of that knowledge because I absorbed it listening to him talk about things that he was studying or trying to figure out himself. And that was one of the things that I know bothered him. He would take it home if he had a patient that he really had to figure out what was going on, and he never let it lie. He didn't say, oh, I'll just send him over to a specialist. We'll figure this out first, and then I'll honestly admit I don't know what it is, and I'll get it to somebody that can help. He always said, I'm not God, I don't claim to be God, and I can't fix everything. So I just love that we found out that he had so many patients and a community that loved him. Like Kathy said, you know, we knew he was a good doctor, but we had no idea the scale, the complexity of, 3,000 patients and how great of a human being he was loved by his community.
Hi, I'm Donna. I'm Mark's oldest sister and most decrepit. lot to say. My sister's pretty much said it all. Mark was such a wonderful person, even as a little guy. You know, he was great to me. He didn't get physical. We didn't get fights. We didn't hardly ever. I can count on one hand all the disagreements we had through the years. I was very fortunate to be part of his entourage. I mean, lifelong friends, going camping with him and things like that. When Mark was a little guy, and he was about 4, one of his favorite superheroes in his alter ego through life was Touche Turtle. I don't know how many of you remember Touche.
Touche Turtle!
And anyway, one day I was sitting on my bed doing something, I don't remember what, and I looked up and standing in the doorway is Mark. And in Touche Turtle's glory, there he was. He had a cape on. Touche Turtle had a cape. It was a towel. It was a towel cape. And he was standing there in his tighty-whities, and he looked at me. He raised up his arm and he said, "Touche Turtle and away." He charged in his bedroom, socked me right in the jaw. I'm not sure what I did. To incite the wrath of Touche, but I did. And so Touche always reminds me of Mark. In fact, when he went into the hospital for his surgery, he was wearing a Touche Turtle t-shirt. And because that was his fighting guy. And anyway, so he loved cartoons in general anyway, but anyway, I love Mark, and I'm sure happy. He has so many great friends, so many people who love him. He was just a wonderful person.